Rooster Teeth is somewhat of an anomaly when it comes to the World Wide Web. I think what cements them as one of the biggest juggernauts of online media creation, even without the help of a multi-million-dollar corporation, is their sincerity. Their first show, or at least the show that was their first big hit, Red vs. Blue, was built on the grounds of sincerity. They didn't care about who their audience was, or what the big boys over at Microsoft were going to say. All they wished to do was create an entertaining series that would hopefully make a few people laugh. And that it did, although they were somewhat conservative with their estimates. Not only did they make them laugh, but the series went on to become one of the most genuinely nuanced web series of its time. To this day, I still find myself tearing up over the finale of Season 10. Without even explicitly saying anything, everything that series had built up to comes to a climax, and everything finally makes sense. That sincerity permeates into every single one of their shows. Even in tough times, the team remains passionate about every project they take on. As new members join, as the team expands, new ideas are brought to the table. But even so, that classic Rooster Teeth charm remains. Thing is, charm can only get you so far, and Rooster Teeth needs to make lightning strike twice, or 3 times, depending on what you truly consider success. Red vs. Blue is undoubtedly influential on internet animation as a whole, but due to the nature of its intellectual property, merchandising is somewhat of an issue. Yes, Microsoft does endorse the project, but to this day we still don't get anything on the level of their other show, RWBY. In spite of its several narrative issues, RWBY is a powerhouse. In preparation for this video, I actually went back and caught up on the 2 seasons I had missed. I think the show summarizes my thoughts in a quotation quite well.
It's fine.
At its lowest point, the show is laughable, but it does seem to be getting better. However, take 2 seconds in any comment section and you'll soon realize that better isn't good enough. RWBY's staying power is dwindling, and even though I think it's far from cancellation, it's definitely gone from a heavy hitter to a cult classic. Some might say it's because they've lost the Rooster Teeth passion since Monty's passing, but I think it's due to a lack of direction and understanding of his work. Monty wasn't perfect, but he was a visionary, and without him you end up with work that seems indistinguishable from Miku Miku Dance and Source Filmmaker fan works. Rooster Teeth needs polish. It needs a high-quality product in order to bring back customer trust, because we are talking about a company here and actual customers paying for their first services and for their merchandise. It needs something that's back to basics with a simple story, a good sci-fi premise, and something that's not overcome by edgelord insanity. We have a simple concept of mechs—
Seriously, for f***'s sake, can you please keep it down?
What? You said I could use this place while my neighbors were partying. It's too noisy, I can't record shit over there.
Well, how was I supposed to know that would entail actual voice recording?
It's a YouTube channel. That's what a YouTube channel entails. What the hell are you even studying anyway?
Science.
Huh. Does engineering count as science?
Kind of. What are you discussing anyways?
Oh, well there's this new show called Genlock that's currently running on Rooster Teeth.
Oh, I actually did see the first 2 episodes of that. Can I have a go?
At what?
At this YouTube thing.
I don't see why not. Here, I'll scooch over for a second.
Yep, sounds good. Whatever.
So, a bit over that way.
So needy.
Yep. Well, I suppose in collaboration with my friend James Wong today, today's diagnosis pertains to Rooster Teeth's hit new show, or at least I hope it's a hit new show, Genlock. If I had to describe this show, at its heart it's a pastiche of Pacific Rim, Starship Troopers, and James Cameron's Avatar. In a nutshell, an attack on New York from a malevolent force of their powerful nanomachine son leaves America in chaos. It's tragic, but what do you expect when they didn't see them coming until they were literally centimeters away from the country's government?
Pretty much the fascists unlocked their secret stand ability of purple haze. Seriously, it's even f***ing purple.
You mean purple smoke?
F*** you.
What?
We follow Julian Chase, an ace fighter pilot who, despite countless years of training and combat experience, decides to f*** up when it matters the most and sends himself flying out of formation and into the enemy daddy longlegs.
4 years later, it's revealed that he's alive, performing militarized science experiments with an exaggerated 11th Doctor, foregoing his family, friends, and girlfriend, whom has somewhat moved on. Also, now he's a cripple.
Well, you know, that creepy best friend has better equipment than Chase at the moment, considering the accident.
Right off the bat, this show feels far more professional than anything Rooster Teeth has put out before. The cinematography is on a whole other level to what they've produced in the past. Gone are the static empty shots that have no place in a fully 3D environment, being replaced by something that is, well, more cinematic.
The character interactions are definitely better too. coming across as far more believable and compelling even in the first few minutes. As much as we hate to beat a dead Grimm, compared to the introduction of Ruby Rose in the first episode of Ruby, a lot more depth is given to this world. It's a real indicator of quality when this show presents its introduction with more nuance, yet tackling a mundane action of enjoying a family meal. Taking the example of Chase's sister, the way in which she builds to presenting the subject of our proposal is cheeky and by extension in keeping with the attitude of a child, but also sensitive and caring to her family around her. All this is conveyed in under 15 seconds and without grinding the story to a halt with expositions and flashbacks. Not to overstate things, but this kind of character depth is seldom seen in much of storytelling even to this day.
There's so much more to get into with this opening scene too, like the subtle introduction of the technology through clever shot composition. By changing the music and colour palette between shots of the family, the idea that people have some kind of brain implant is conveyed exceptionally well. This nuance permeates the entire series, as I've said many times. There's clear thought and professionalism to the show as a whole, including the design philosophy, sound design, and even the character designs. The world as a whole feels believable, and everyone within it has genuine emotion for once, as opposed to complaining about each other with as much edge as Dio Zawarudo! Even the side characters, although a tad stereotypical, feel like they've got some decent room to grow. Madrani has some depth with her Union backstory that can be explored in later episodes. Valentina's apathy can be a foil to the team, and she's basically the burst from Fury, and I fucking loved that boss fight, so I already fucking love her. Katsu is a little bit shallow when compared to the famous delinquents of anime lore, but at least is passable, and Cammy seems to be the resident technobabble spouter with a healthy dose of waifu bait to make the community go nuts over her.
Shadowbase's gonna have some fun with her.
Dude, don't say that shit. We're gonna get demonetized!
We're not monetized to begin with.
I know.
The mech designs we are first shown are f***ing brilliant. There's a definite difference in design philosophy between Japanese design mechs and American ones, not to say that they can't be interchanged, as media takes influence from many places. However, the American mech philosophy
American?
Eat and die.
Yes, f*** you.
Is heavily based on realism, as opposed to the rule of cool, extending from actual robotic research being conducted nowadays. An American design mech is essentially a slightly more mobile tank with more emphasis on firepower than anthropomorphism. I do find it annoying that they walk in this show, because considering Genlock tries to ground itself in a somewhat realistic setting, comparative to most dystopian science fiction mecha shows, 2 moving legs on a mech suit simply aren't viable. If you have a big off artillery module, the last thing you want is to have the square cube lord knocking on your door in the middle of the night because you've been cheating on her. However, as with all sci-fi, some suspension of disbelief is required. If the writers are going to allow very little room for bending the laws of physics to begin with, these mechs have no place. These things would never, under any circumstances, be able to support their own weight, let alone perform crazy acrobatics that serve no purpose other than, this is hype. At least in shows such as Gundam, you can make the argument that they're in space, which makes things a little more understandable.
Have you seen Iron Blood Orphans?
Nope. The problem with trying to approach the Japanese philosophy of mech design is that you sacrifice most of your firepower in favor of mobility. Here's the problem though, you're still a giant robot. Mobility means jack shit when the entire point is to be an artillery unit.
But James, it's science fiction!
Dude, that's not an excuse for foregoing criticism.
But James, it's science. The thing with Genlock is that it has to pull double duty as not just a self-contained show, but also a defibrillator to the Rooster Teeth animation house. As I said earlier, the fandom is still f***ing pissed the mishandling of Ruby and the mediocrity of current Red vs. Blue. Rooster Teeth needs to make money, and how do you make money? Merchandising! Slight problem though, the realism of the show conflicts with the potential of merchandise. Spend almost 2 minutes in a hobby store and you'll instantly see grunt units on sale for half and sometimes even a third of the price. The mechs in this show, minus the best one, don't look like protagonist mechs. They look like General Army units of a knockoff Gundam show, which makes sense in the context of the universe given their experimental units, but when you're going to make giant robots stand out from the rest, they need to be somewhat unique. There's a bit of an identity crisis here. They're too realistic to be marketable and too wacky to fit the science fiction setting.
But at least they're not as ridiculous as the Daddy Longlegs mechs.
Daddy Longlegs?
Answer me this. How the f*** can tiny ass spider legs twice the height of the
Statue of Liberty
support a huge structure the size of a football field, hopefully not playing sicko mode without crashing under its own weight?
I'm not sure to be honest.
At this point, you've well and truly divorced the square cube law. Initially, I thought that it was primarily a deep water vehicle, sort of a moving oil rig, with the legs acting more for mobility than stability. The buoyancy aspect could support the weight, but then in the opening, there are several of them standing on dry land.
When will you learn that your actions have consequences?
Where on earth are they getting all the metal anyway?
I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt given their heavy nanomachine technology, but even if they formed this vehicle entirely out of nanomachines, they aren't exactly the strongest considering they're light enough to treat air as essentially water.
On the topic of metal though, how about that opening?
Oh, yeah.
Oi mate, this is security. Shut the f*** up or I'll throw you out the building.
One thing I find a little disappointing is the visuals behind the opening theme song. The song itself is pretty great, but the visuals accompanying it are somewhat shallow. The animation itself is also pretty great, making a good case for the show's art style and overall tone, but none of the shots within the opening sell you on the deeper themes. According to the interviews, this show is about a sense of identity and fighting against totalitarianism. Well, great! Show it! Show some symbolism! Show some evocative imagery of the world going into pure chaos! Although I definitely say that overall RWBY's openings are worse in comparison, with even more generic shot composition, too much edge and absolutely horrible vocals. Sorry to anyone who actually enjoys This Will Be the Day. Actually, no, I'm not sorry, f*** you. Sorry for getting sidetracked though, what I mean to say is that even though RWBY is clearly worse in terms of its openings, credit where credit is due, the imagery is evocative. It's somewhat deeper than the bland nothingness seen with Genlock, although, as I said, I still prefer Genlock's opening. Not because of the opening music, but also because the creative and professional camera movement carries over from the rest of the show.
You have to admit though, the misdirection with Sinclair was a very nice touch. I was not expecting him to be a spy with how the opening treated him.
Actually, I saw it coming from a mile away.
Wait, really?
Yes, yeah, he's not present for the opening montage of the main Holon pilots, and his introduction in the opening later happens to be right after the big bad Union mech does its zombie lunge towards the camera. Whilst I recognise an attempt at a clever match cut, it's not very subtle. I will say this though, this isn't indicative of the entire series. The entire sequence at the beginning of episode 3, although I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, featuring the two simultaneous arguments, were cut brilliantly. The way the conversation naturally flows between one argument and the other, building off the opposite, is a fantastic touch. Overall, the writing is surprisingly good too. Whilst it may be too soon to tell, there definitely seems to be a maturity to the writing that hasn't been present since the 10th season of Red vs. Blue. I'm incredibly excited to see a return to form when it comes to Rooster Teeth's writing staff, because quite honestly, this kind of storytelling has been missing from their lineup for quite some time now.
As great as it is though, and as great as the show overall is, there remains one huge oversight that could possibly turn some people off.
Ah yes, I think we both came to this conclusion, because it is a pretty hefty flaw.
They don't explain f***ing anything. For all the effort they put into the main cast with their motivations, flaws, and character quirks, none of that translates to supporting characters and, to an unfortunately greater extent, the world building. The cast they got for this show is awesome, with Michael B. Jordan, David Tennant, Dakota Fanning, and goddamn Macy Williams. I had no idea she was playing this part, because the last time a Game of Thrones actor played a 3D animated character, he ended up being so bad, Nolan North had to come in and clean up his mess.
I still love you, Tyrion.
Although to be fair, it could have been worse.
But none of that great voice acting can be properly utilized if we don't have a reason to care about these characters. To be fair, they are halfway there. They're both realistic and unique, and I definitely want to see them grow and mature as the series progresses. But we know basically nothing about them, which can lead to many problems down the track.
Actually, we do know a bit about their backstory.
Wait, really? When? How?
Oh, in the exclusive trailers, of course.
Are you f***ing serious right now?
Science Fiction 101. Do not, under any circumstances, relegate your important contextual information to side stories and trailers. Remember when I made my incredibly misguided review on Machinima's Combiner Wars series?
No.
Well, for those that did, I did a similar first reaction to this one. However, I decided to discuss both the series' first episode and 4 motion comic preview trailers that preceded the show itself. The issues with that show are many, but the one most relevant to today's topic pertains to those very trailers. The problem with them is that in order to gain a proper understanding of the show, You need to watch them. Isn't the entire purpose of trailers to reveal as little as possible? If trailers become required watching for the actual series itself, then the fundamental rules of integrated world building are thrown out the window. RWBY already came dangerously close to crossing that line, as the 4 preview trailers for its first season are pseudo-canon or something similar. Fortunately, they clarify things as the story goes on, but in Genlock you need to watch these in order to fully understand the side characters. There are many ample opportunities to rectify this in the future, but honestly it shouldn't be an issue to begin with. If you put necessary information in spin-offs, you don't allow the content you produce to be consumed in a vacuum. And this is a new series we're talking about, not some ambitious end project like Infinity War or Endgame. The 2 worst examples I can think of are the Fate multiverse and Kingdom Hearts. For different reasons, both end up becoming a homework task of reading up everything about the last few installments, which should not be required for a new story starting from scratch. But that's neither here nor there, because it's nowhere near on that level.
Do the trailers at least explain the Union?
Nope!
God damn it. You cannot have a dystopian sci-fi series without a tangible threat. Yes, we do know they've taken over New York and we've seen what they can do, but to not even address what the Union's plan is bad storytelling in a nutshell. The characters know what the Union wants, but for some reason the audience is left in the dust. This kind of shit needs to be established, otherwise any and all sense of urgency to the plot is destroyed. Who are they? Where did they come from? Why do they want to take over America? Japan exists in this world and is supposedly an ally of the US, so what part do they have in it? Iran is supposedly taken over by the Union, so how did that happen? Valentina has been fighting the Union in Eastern Europe for years prior to the events of the series, so how did that happen? The professor is British, so what's the relationship between Britain and the States? Do the protagonists know how the Union discovered the secrets behind nanotechnology? If they do, how did they? Does anyone see the obvious metaphor of the Civil War? I mean, you have the Union, you have the Underground Railroad, so are our protagonists part of the Confederates? Hey, I'm just saying. Am I the only one seeing this?
But James, it's
Dude,
science fiction.
Listen, that is not an excuse for lazy writing.
When it comes to world building and science, the 2 play a very big role in making the audience take your world seriously. Even if the narrative isn't that serious on its own, the world itself needs to be believable, and that comes down to the creator's understanding of how the world and its inner machinations work. What's more, this show does have a more serious tone than RWBY, probably because the directors actually put thought into everything they did, as opposed to try to make the show as edgy as a high school Pythagorean kit, and unintentionally creating a laughingstock.
Why the f*** is everyone standing around doing nothing? Why?
Even the fight scenes have more weight to them. My absolute favorite fights from RWBY were Sun vs Torchwick, Sun vs Ilya, and especially Yang vs Nero, particularly in the latter. You can see not just tactics and strategy, but also emotions and inner conflict. That kind of thought is firmly placed into each of the show's fight scenes, despite the more mundane framing. Yes, the fights aren't as bombastic, but given the heightened thought and care put into each frame, you feel the weight of each punch, the recoil of each shot, the shock of each death. However, that will only get the show so far. What will truly push the show over the edge is its attention to detail, which is currently partially there. But I do hope that the team never truly stops listening to criticism. Fortunately, this is Rooster Teeth, and if there's one thing they can do, it's improve.
Whilst it's not probable that these kinds of issues will be addressed in the first season, I definitely think they'll be able to fix some of these flaws as the show goes on. Currently we have 8 confirmed episodes, following the Castlevania model of fewer episodes but at a higher quality. This is a proven model, and as long as they persist with the story, I think they'll have a winner on their hands. Already the show was good enough to entice me into purchasing their premium first service, and although it is possible this show will crash and burn, already the sense of professionalism and nuance is apparent throughout the first episode, and the second. In fact, the third too. So, did Rooster Teeth allow lightning to strike a third time? Yes, they did. There definitely is an air of concern surrounding the fanbase, and why wouldn't there be? But as long as this show continues to keep its quality up, those who were scorned will certainly return. First off, I just want to thank Paper Plane for playing the part of the security guards. I'm very grateful for what he did. And second off, I'd like to thank my friend James Wong for being on the channel.
Yeah, glad to be here, man.
I believe you wanted to go over your webcomic again.
Yes. So I know I've been moving at Tortoise's pace that has been recently amputated, But I have the final 2 pages of Extrion done. Chapter 1 is now complete. I will start a Kickstarter for Chapter 2. Hopefully, hope you consider that, or you could view it at Tapas. It's a science fiction story starring Gaius, the last known human in the entire universe. He does not know why he is the last human. He does not even know if the other humans are dead, but he needs to find out. It's going to be proven very difficult to do, considering how all the other alien races out there are trying to kill each other and take entire galaxies with them.
Sounds pretty damn awesome. So you'll get to work on that. Do you want me to help you out with editing that video for the Kickstarter?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good, man. Sounds good.
But until then, how about we watch episode 3?
Oh, is that?
Yeah, I've got first, so we can watch it that way.
Okay. Well, might as well. Looks promising.
Let's go.
Promising.